Welcome to this Holocaust Memorial event, where we're joining with others throughout the nation on this important day. Just want to say I'm extremely grateful to our Mayor, Councillor Richardson, for suggesting that we hold such an event here in Coleshill. It's wonderful that we are joining, as I say, with the whole nation in this important moment. I hope it's something that will continue through the years to come. My other thank you is just to say a thank you to Simon, who, as ever, has just been so wonderful in putting things together for us. So this is being pre-recorded, as I'm sure you'll guess, but to say thank you to Simon and making it all so seamless. I'm going to hand over now to Adam. Thank you.
Welcome all to the candlelight vigil for Holocaust Memorial Day 2021, with the theme of Be the Light in the Darkness. You can see in front of me glass jars which hold the symbols that people were forced to wear in concentration camps. My name, for those who don't know it, is Adam Richardson, and I'm the Mayor of Coleshill Town Council. As a town, Coleshill has always prided itself on our annual Remembrance Parade and service. And the support for this has grown every year, with local residents joining the parade or lining the streets to clap as the march passes by to show their respect. We have a deep passion and support for one of our own young Coleshillians, the late James Munday, who so tragically lost his life in Afghanistan in 2008. The loss which has been felt by so many, which has shown with how much the Remembrance Parade has grown since then. As a member of the Royal British Legion myself, encouraged by my father who was in the army, we as a family feel very strongly about the tragedy and pains of war as much as many do. In 2017, I became aware of the Holocaust Memorial Trust and the work they were doing to promote awareness of the injustices and tragedies of war and conflict, many of which still sadly continue today. So I asked the Town Council in November of 2020 if we as a town could support the 2021 Holocaust Memorial Day with an event of our own here in Coleshill. I had been preparing a small gathering to be simultaneously streamed live on social media for today on Coleshill Croft. Reverend Nick Parker, Michael Muzzafer Clarke, and special guest Rabbi Yehunda, as well as myself, we're all keen to come together for a candlelit, socially distanced gathering to raise awareness and share stories, in the hope of minimising future atrocities through education and information sharing. Unfortunately, lockdown 3 arrived and all best laid plans diminished. I still feel that this is a cause worth promoting. I hope we can come together in 2022 in Coleshill to commemorate this cause. I hope many of you will be able and keen to join us next year and continue to work together to try to reduce and eradicate such awful experiences in the name of humanity.
Children of Rwanda by Reverend Francois Morenzi. Known and unknown are the children of Rwanda, victims of war and genocide. Go not with us now, we know you're at peace. We who survived will remember you. 10 years onward, our hearts still troubled by lack of justice for survivors. Help our leaders bringing peace and hope, also preventing the same tragedies. Will you join me now? Remember lives lost. Will you join me now, pleading to all? To learn the lessons that, at any cost, genocide must end forevermore.
Having lived in Coleshill most of my life, I am very proud of the commitment and support that Coleshill people give to the uniform organisations, and especially the fantastic support on Remembrance Day every year. Coleshill has a long history of honouring its servicemen, with 3 separate memorials in our town and 9 war graves. The personal story that I have brings these awful truths into my own family's experience. This story is one I would like to share. It was told to me from when I was a young child by my nan, who is sadly no longer here to tell it herself. And I believe her story needs to go on. My nan was born in Germany in 1935. At the age of 8, in her hometown of Passau, her and her sister were playing one winter time on a bridge covered with fallen snow, when, as usual, a train passed under the bridge that they were playing on. They noticed that it had stopped. However, this time it was no usual train. When it had stopped, my nan's sister, my grandaunt, and herself looked over at the train and were surprised to see a long line of open-topped cattle trucks. Looking down, they could see a mass of people packed inside each truck. So tight, in fact, that my nan had referred to them as being like sardines and crushing each other. As the passengers noticed them on the bridge, everyone in the cattle trucks looked up and yelled, "Wasser, Wasser." This is the German word for water. So, of course, being young, innocent children, my grandaunt and my nan proceeded to make up snowballs and carefully toss them down to those anxious people in the cattle trucks. Unfortunately, my nan and grandaunt were seen by a Hitler youth doing this. And so he walked quickly over to them and said that if they didn't stop helping the passengers, then they would both be shot as enemies of Germany. My nan said that it had scared her and her sister so much that they both ran straight home. They know not of what happened to those thousands of people on that train, and we can only imagine what might have happened from history books and archives. However, in order to do our own individual part to make a change, we can attend this event annually, share our family stories, raise awareness, and do anything possible to ensure that such atrocities that befell those on that train will never, ever happen again. In order to share this plight, the pin badges you see all the speakers wearing here today and booklets will be available via the hub when it can reopen, with all proceeds going to the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust charity to help with their vital and valuable work. We will now have a pre-recorded video from our first speaker, which is Rabbi Yehunda, who sadly cannot be with us today due to lockdown and his health. Rabbi Pink decided to send us a video, so we thank him for that.
Today we remember the 6 million Jews, including 1.5 million children who perished in the Holocaust. We remember them all. Remember each and every Jew beaten, tortured, hung, shot, burnt and gassed during the 6 darkest years of our history. It's hard to sense the sheer scale of destruction. On September 11th, 2001, history was changed by a terrorist attack in which 3,000 people died. During the Holocaust, on average, 3,000 Jews were killed every day of the week for 5.5 years. And the killing didn't stop with just Jews. The mentally ill, the physically handicapped, gypsies and gays were murdered because they were different. The Holocaust was exceptional in the scientific precision with which it was carried out. It was unprecedented in the sheer scale on which it was conceived. But what made it truly different from other mass murders was that it served no interest. At the height of the slaughter, the Nazis diverted trains from the Russian front to transport victims to the extermination camps. As Emil Fackenheim once put it, the Holocaust was evil for evil's sake. And today we remember. The theme of today's commemoration is Be the Light in the Darkness. Just over a year ago, I was privileged to visit the village of Buttenhausen in Germany, where my grandfather grew up, and his father, Rabbi Naftali Berlinger, was the last rabbi. His wife died from a stroke brought on from stress due to the ill treatment that she suffered at the hands of the Nazi youth. Naftali was a realist. He understood the danger and worked to secure visas to enable his children to escape Germany. But he refused to leave his post, saying that the responsibility of the rabbi is to be there for the community. And indeed, during those dark years of persecution, he was a beacon of light to those unable to leave. When the Nazis came to burn down the synagogue, the non-Jewish mayor of the town blocked their way, showing by example what it means to be a person who brings light to the world rather than imposes darkness. Unfortunately, the next day the Nazis returned with reinforcements, arrested the mayor, and caused a different kind of light when they burnt the synagogue to the ground, a light born of hatred and evil. The Lubavitcher Rebbe once said, "Just as the Nazis hunted down every Jew with hatred, we have a mission today to hunt down every person in the world with love and friendship." Almighty God, help us to remember and to learn. May you, giving us life, teach us to hold it sacred, in faithfulness to you and generosity to those around us, so that by reaching out in love, we may turn enemies into friends and become your family on earth as you are our parent in heaven. May you, who make peace in high places, help us to make peace on earth. May you bring a healing of the body and a healing of the soul to all those innocent victims of conflict throughout the world. May this be your will, and let us say Amen.
Auschwitz by Charles N. Whittaker. The semi-quaver chugging of the train on the track, and the people on board who will never go back, and the terror in the eyes of all the young ones to go, with no one knowing as the train comes to slow. Those men at the station as the ramps drop down, where humanity lost is the only crippled sound. Hope gone for those who stand behind the hard, sharp wire, and the smoke in the towers rises just a little higher. And the blue ink stabs a little harder in the skin, above the veins of despair where murder let it in. And the terror in the eyes of all those about to leave. Another train on the track, no last-minute reprieve. And the slow, crotchet chugging of the train on the track, and the people on board who will never go back.
Thank you for that, Rabbi Pink. We also heard the poem Auschwitz, read by Olivia Coleman. Our next speaker is Michael Muzzafer Clarke, a representative from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
Trauma of a concentration camp survivor. I witnessed the horror of what he'd seen with my own eyes. This happened in the 1960s when I was young. I worked in an engineering factory. It was a Friday evening and I was going home on the bus after work. I was upstairs and I remember a man sitting on the front seat. I knew he worked as a labourer in the same factory as me, but I didn't know him to talk to. He was a thin, sallow-faced man with dark eyes, and he was dressed in dark clothes, and he wore a Bob Dylan cap. I didn't take much note of him, but I saw him suddenly put his hands over his head and get off the seat and crouched down between the front seat and the window. He was cowering in fear as if he was afraid of being hit. Surprisingly, he didn't make a noise, but he was terrified. The bus conductor was standing close to him, looking shocked at the man's reaction to him. In those days, London bus conductors wore black uniforms with silver buttons and pink caps. They also had metal ticket machines. I can only assume that the bus conductor had spoken to the man a bit gruffly, or had approached him unexpectedly, and his black uniform had brought back a terrifying experience which the poor man was reliving in front of me. I saw the horror of what he'd been through with my own eyes. The Shoah can only be truly understood by those who have experienced it. I have to tell you that even today, my community, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, are killed and persecuted by fellow Muslims simply because we have a different way of understanding some verses of the Quran. In Pakistan, Ahmadi Muslims are forbidden by law to call themselves Muslims or to vote as Muslims. We can be imprisoned for merely saying Assalamu alaikum if the other person decides to report them. Our public meetings, books and literature are banned. We cannot refer to our mosques as mosques. If we apply for a passport, we have to sign a declaration denying our faith. We are discriminated against in education and employment. Ahmadi graves are dug up and even the bodies of innocent children are left by the roadside. If an Ahmadi lodges a complaint to the police, they automatically side with the perpetrator and not the victim. Some extremist mullahs have declared that Ahmadi Muslims deserve to be killed and the killer will be rewarded with a place in heaven. In Glasgow, an innocent Ahmadi shopkeeper was murdered because he wished his customers a happy Easter or a Merry Christmas. Some British shops have signs in Urdu saying that dogs and Ahmadi Kafirs, disbelievers, are not welcome. Does all this sound familiar to you?
Racism by Rosie Young, aged 8. If hate was an animal, it would be a green-eyed python. If hate was a place, it would be the bottom of the ocean. If hate was an illness, it would be the Black Plague. If love was a season, it would be a warm summer. If love was a food, it would be a birthday cake with 6 candles. Love is like a big, fat, juicy yellow mango.
Thank you, Michael. We cross now to Reverend Nick Parker, who is our final speaker.
Unlike our other speakers today, I have no personal connection with the Holocaust. But of course, that does not make it any less important to me. And perhaps it helps others who are watching this that also have no personal connection to relate. What certainly made it more real to me are 2 things. The first is a conversation that I had with Arthur Corley. Arthur was a long-time member of this church and died quite recently. Indeed, his flowers, the flowers that we had at his funeral, are behind me on the windowsill. And what I didn't know about Arthur for many years was that he was one of those who was there at the liberation of Belsen. And we had a conversation one time where he relayed to me some of the horrors and all that that meant to him. So that made it more real. I'm now going to pass over to Michael, who's going to read a poem about Belsen.
This poem was written by Lolo Lewis, who served in the British 11th Armoured Division, which liberated the Belsen-Bergen concentration camp in April 1945. Long gone, the sound of battle from this foreign dell, as we tread again the Belsen grass, remembering comrades, young men all, who died to reach this awful hell. Hallowed now for eternity, as the clouds from memory swiftly pass. Listen then, can't you hear the silence here around, telling us of terror and ancient bestial fear? How real is this silence that permeates from from underground. Only 50 years ago, but now, forever, the silence condemns. For here there lie, anonymous, 'neath the soil, as we reverently bow, remnants of a living dead, whose silence still transmits, transcends. Listen to the silence still, and lift your head on high. Are you waiting for a question or an answer and a void to fill? Quicken then the pulse, breathe deeper still. Answer the silence to the question, why?
The second thing that makes the Holocaust so real is the privilege I had about a year ago hearing from Ava Schloss, who is a survivor of the concentration camps. This was at my son Matthew's school. We heard her relay her life story, along with an amazing art exhibition and a play that was based on her life growing up. That was growing up with her stepsister and great friend, Anne Frank, and her brother Heinz. Heinz sadly died in the concentration camps, and the art exhibition I mentioned was of his poetry and incredible artwork. The play that we saw, as I say, about their lives is titled And Then They Came For Me, a play by James Still, and well worth watching online if you can find it. The title of that play comes from a famous poem, a poem written by Martin Niemöller. He was a Lutheran priest. And in that poem he is talking about his own failure and the failure of the church to confront the rise of fascism, and the regret, of course, that he and others felt so keenly after the war. It also means that I have to reflect on the role of the church and the failures of the church. Sadly, part of the history of Christianity has been a feeding of anti-Semitism and a collusion with the lie that the Jews were Christ killers. Of course, that is a lie because Jesus himself was a Jew. When I think about his death on the cross for political reasons, political expediency, killed because he preached a gospel of love, killed because of hate, that of course puts him and God himself in solidarity with all of those who have died through the Holocaust and indeed through other genocides. And so to read, as I conclude, this powerful poem by Martin Niemöller. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I am not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me.
I Kept on Walking by Mark Hayward. I kept on walking as she threw a stone, for it was not thrown at me. I kept on walking past the man who groaned as he was hit behind the knee. I kept on walking past the run-down homes. I had somewhere else to be. I kept on walking as I clutched my phone and pretended not to see. I kept on walking as the words were thrown, every insult, every plea. The wounds they inflicted were not my own and nothing to do with me. I kept on walking when the rage had grown till the bodies filled the streets. I kept on walking over skulls and bones, ash and blood beneath my feet. I'll keep on walking from the things I've known but refused to really see. I'll keep on walking, but I'm not alone. You're keeping step with me.
This is a prayer written for this day by Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and the senior Imam, Clarke. They come together to write it.
Loving God, we come to you with heavy hearts, remembering the 6 million Jewish souls murdered during the Holocaust.
In the horrors of that history, when so many groups were targeted because of their identity, and in genocides which followed, we recognise destructive prejudices that drive people apart.
Forgive us when we give space to fear, negativity and hatred of others, simply because they're different from us.
In the light of God, we see everyone as equally precious manifestations of the divine and can know the courage to face the darkness.
Through our prayers and actions, help us to stand together with those who are suffering so that light may banish all darkness. Love will prevail over hate and good will triumph over evil.
Amen.